Buddy Book Club. I'm Dylan, here with a man whose voice numbs my pain better than any drug on the market. Keith, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how we doing? I'm here with D-Man, not Demon, just to make sure we're not confused there.
Oh, that's some low-hanging fruit, really,
yeah,
for you.
I had to do it.
We're here at the Buddy Book Club. We're reading out some bestsellers, and this week we'll be discussing Barbara Kingsolver or Kingsolver? Whatever, I'm not sure. Her 2022 hit Bill Dunsgromen novel, which is like a coming-of-age type thing. You have to look it up. The novel is Demon Copperhead. If you'd like to recommend a book for us to read or reach out to us about any past episodes, you can visit our website, buddybookclub.com, or slide into our DMs, Twitter, Instagram, Buddy Book Club Podcast. You can listen to us iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Please download, give us a 5-star review. You can talk shit after that, but 5 stars would be nice. If nothing, give us a follow on social channels, please. And thank you, Keith. 448 on Goodreads. Pretty good. I think we might be, I don't know, numb to Goodreads at this point, or at least me, considering we just read Fourth Wing. That was like 458, and that didn't hit home for me. The wife's been pushing for this one for a while. She really liked it, and I'm interested to hear your take. I feel like our wheelhouse is, would you say it's like YA, fantasy, sci-fi?
Yeah, throw in some thriller, maybe some action.
So this is more of like a literary novel. Like, this is a heavy hitter, so we'll see. I'm interested to your take, but I got a book report for you, so I'm going to fire that up if you're ready for me, Professor.
Get it.
If you're into modern takes of literary classics, boy, do I have the book for you. The book is pretty much Dickens's David Copperfield, except you swap out Victorian England with contemporary Appalachia, alcohol with oxys, and writing as a means out of poverty with drawing. Cartoons, graphic novels, whatever you like. If you like to read as a means of escape, and you like to feel good after reading, this may not be the book for you. All the terrible childhood tropes are neatly packaged into an orange pill bottle and force-fed you one page after another until you find yourself passed out on the couch frothing at the mouth with your significant other slapping you back from the brink. Is it a good novel? Yeah, I thought so. Demon is a well-thought-out, nuanced character who you can't stop rooting for even when life continues to swift kick him in the balls. Although tropey at times, it's well-written novel that hits you right in the feels. So that's my book report, and I'm ready to talk about it.
Okay, I like it. Here is where I won't be subjective. I think objectively, that was an A-. Subjectively, I'm going to make probably people that like this book in Carolina not very happy because I wasn't a fan, but I think you did a good job covering it. Yeah,
well, way to not bury the lead. I appreciate you just going straight for saying you're not a fan. Let's get into some stock up, stock down. Keith, stock up, what do you got?
Stock up, stereotypes. A big theme of this book.
Pardon me?
Yeah, is that stereotyping and stereotypes of people, especially Southern people, is kind of lazy, which I agree. I completely agree with. I hate when you're watching a TV show and just a side character will come in and you're just like, oh, they have to stereotype and make this character this thing, so they're going to do the most obvious things. Like, oh, that's the hillbilly. He's dumb. He's Southern. He's a racist. He's all these things that you just like kind of assign to someone just because they have an accent, which, yeah, I think is just lazy. I always roll my eyes when I see it.
Yeah.
And this book talks about that a lot, how like people in these regions are painted in that way. That's a really good point, like how it must be tough to grow up seeing that. And then you read the book and you realize, oh no, the stereotypes are completely right based off this book. They're complaining about them not being educated. Everyone there doesn't care about school. They try to bring up all these things, especially Angus, to make school more a priority. And they're like, we don't care about this. That's football. Football is more important than school. So it's like, oh, okay, so education, check. They don't care about education. That's the stereotype. You're proving that in this book. Everyone in this book is kind of like a little bit heartless or like mean-spirited, it seems like. It seems like everyone's out for themselves. Everyone is kind of going with the flow. There's like maybe 2 or 3 characters that are actually good people, it seems like. And obviously some of that's just based off of how they grew up and their conditions like that. But again, all these things, these stereotypes, I'm reading this and I'm like, oh, okay. I guess the stereotypes we hear about are real.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point in that they are saying, about these stereotypes, and then a lot of the characters are these stereotypes. The other thing that they're saying in the book, though, as well, is that we, as in the government or a capitalistic society or whatever, I mean, I'm going to talk more about that anyways, but these corporations have kind of created this effect in this area where by kind of making sure that people remain in poverty, that those kinds of people will, like you said, will be perpetuated. And, you know, I don't know, there's a famous quote, like, no society is more than 3 meals away from revolution or whatever the case is. And I think that's part of the idea in here, where so many of these people are legitimately hungry. Like, there's so much poverty going on that they're actually hungry, including Demon at many times in this book. And I think about that sometimes, how hangry I get after like missing one meal or like not sleeping well one night. And this is just people's lives.
Yeah.
You know, every day they're either missing meals, having shitty meals, not sleeping because they're spending their entire day taking care of their families or out hustling for drugs, and then working hard menial jobs. So I do agree, but I think it's more nuanced than what you're saying.
Well, the problem is too is the whole point of our podcast, and the thing is not to be nuanced. It's supposed to be trying to just to be lighthearted. So this is going to be impossible.
This is a tough book for us. Yeah. This is
I'm talking up stereotypes because I think it's funny and I'm joking, but at the same time I was saying it and I'm like, oh, I feel like this is too serious now that I'm saying it out loud, because this book is just such a dark, like, serious subject. So can we get that out front that I'm joking?
Yeah, and this one's going to be tough for us, I feel like, in general, because we, especially when it comes to...
It's so above my pay grade.
Yeah, one, it's definitely above our pay grade. And two, it's a serious book with serious subject matter, and we often deal with books that are in different fantastical realms that don't necessarily... Like, you can make fun of all of those things because they don't even exist. Right, you know, exactly. It's an absurdity, so why not just start throwing shade? When we try to have fun with this one, and it's dealing with serious things like drug overdoses and big pharma coming into a small community and absolutely ruining it and then taking all the money and running, it's tough to make jokes about. So just ahead of time, if you could all give us some grace here, if we make a few blunders, I won't be stocking up like Narcan or something like that. But
that's a good one. I don't know why not. But,
yeah, I should have. Yeah. So, but what's funny about your stereotype thing was I didn't really notice it. I mean, I didn't notice it too much, or it didn't jump out to me. But legitimately, like 2 hours before we started recording this, the wife's watching some Kate Hudson basketball show on Netflix. That's fucking terrible. But one of the characters that just like happened to come in the episode I was watching was one of the basketball players' moms, and she's got a southern accent. She's a southern woman. What did she say she did to help raise her kid? She stripped, naturally. And who is her...
She's not a rich southern, because there's two stereotypes, the redneck and the...
the redneck version. And what? Who did she identify as her favorite feminist? Paula Deen. And what did she decide to make her son for dinner now that she's in town? Trash can chicken is what she was talking about. So as I'm watching this, I'm just like, Demon is like, the whole Demon story is coming into my head. I was like, oh my God, this is just such a blatant and terrible and not really funny I mean, nothing about it was funny. It was just... It
was supposed to be funny, though?
It's a comedy.
Oh,
so,
okay.
like, the show is a comedy. Yeah. And it shows her making this trash can chicken and talking about how salmonella is, like, a deep state, like, lie or something. I was very confused. And I think maybe the book has kind of made those things not that funny. I'm wondering, the only one I can enjoy, I think, is Kenneth from 30 Rock as someone... from like Appalachia, that's actually a funny guy, but that's more that he was just like sheltered and didn't know anything about the world.
Yeah, he didn't need to be Southern for that, but yeah.
Yeah, he could have been whatever. My first stock up is rural living. So, you know, I mean, in this book, if you take out the rampant drug abuse, single trailer living, and green tobacco poisoning, Outside of that, I'm all for it. You know, there's a natural beauty to it. I think the literal kind with the beautiful mountains and woods, but then the metaphorical kind with just people living off what they make on their own lands, doing some hunting and fishing. You know, swapping one thing for another with their neighbors. A little moonshine. Who doesn't love a little shine? The idea you can just like keep your doors unlocked and no one even knows where their house keys are. You know everyone in town. You know, Demon was even saying when he went to rehab, that all of his friends in rehab were blown away that he still had a license because they had gotten so many DUIs. And he was like, oh, well, in my town, all the cops are, you know, people you went to high school with or whatever the case is. Like, no one would give you a DUI. Like, it just doesn't happen, you know. And then just being entertained by your own means, not kind of needing the big entertainment of city living. I thought there's a beauty to that. So I had to respect it because that's all I got.
I agree with that. I feel like just living out by yourself sometimes like that is kind of does also suck when you need to drive like 20 miles to like the grocery store. It's like, oh, this isn't as fun.
Hey, it's funny you say that because that was the one part I was thinking about when you're a kid and you have a bike. And the second you get a bike when you're a kid, you're like, this is freedom. I can now do whatever I want. I can go wherever I want. I can do anything. In these places, you need a dirt bike or something. There's no way you're gonna actually get anywhere with a pedal power. Yeah, being further away from things would kind of suck.
Growing up in the suburbs is the best of both worlds, where you got to have a grocery store that's somewhat close by, but also you're not in the city.
So I thought that was an interesting line that was in the book. He said, in the city, you're surrounded by everything that's dead because it's just like bricks and concrete. And when you live outside of the city, you see grass and trees and rolling meadows, whatever the case is. It's like the world is alive. There's animals everywhere and stuff. And in the city, it's just all concrete jungle situation. So I like that line. What else do you have for stock up?
The ick stock up?
The ick?
Are you familiar with this term?
No, what is that?
Ick is like, so apparently this is like the new age thing. Someone does something and immediately you're like, oh, I'm not attracted to that person, or they're like rubbing the wrong way now.
Oh, like one specific thing?
Yeah, like, oh, he wore socks with his sandals. He gave me the ick. You know, I can't, like, now I don't see him the same way anymore.
Yeah. Caroline hasn't looked at me the same since I hawked up a loogie and I showed it to her on my tongue.
Yeah, gross. Well, so we get introduced to U-Haul, the character, for the first time.
Immediately gives me the ick.
He gets out of the car. They're like, no, we're not going with this guy. This is the most creepy, disgusting looking, terrible person we've ever seen. Every single thing about him screams creep. And they describe him. They're like, he was a pale Irishman. That's it. I was like, wait a second, wait, what?
That's you.
They're like, yeah, he's just an Irish person. I was like, oh. So yeah, the ick is a little bit tough for certain people, but another stereotype that proved correctly. You know, he was like, this guy looks like a creep. He was a creep. It was a terrible, terrible person. So believe in the ick, believe in stereotypes. I'm out to a hot start. 2 for 2.
He didn't touch Angus, right? He was
trying to.
I know, but it was so creepy when she was like explaining it, or I don't know I think it was from Demon's perspective or whatever, but he was saying something about how U-Haul like watched her bathe as a child or something, and I was like, oh god, like
I was hoping he'd be
do anything though, right?
Good character, because it'd been nice that one person isn't exactly what you kind of think they are in this book. Every single person, they introduce them and they're like, here's who he was, but his faults are this. And then he just does all the things that are his faults. But no one ever changed. Everyone was exactly the same throughout the book.
It's like Dory, I guess, potentially started off and you're thinking, oh wow, she's a great person who just takes care of her dad, and then all of a sudden she's in the car like shooting morphine patches between her toes. So there was a brief moment where you thought she was someone else, and then
that was the same thing as Fast Forward. Fast Forward was like super fun to be around and cool. Turns out though, he was a super selfish, terrible person, and then for the rest of his life he's like that also. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and then like Rose, or I think that's the character's name, Rose, his like foster sister or whatever the case was. She has that giant scar on her face, and she's like, "Oh, by the way, Fast Forward gave me this as a child. Also, he strung up my brother and told him to jump so he would strangle himself." It's like, what the fuck? It's tough when there's not a lot of positive, like the only positive role models really, I guess like the Peggotts were decent people. So, but
they were sucked.
The Peggotts were just kind of keeping things under control as best they could. You know, they weren't going on whatever. Aunt June was obviously a saint. And then his teachers, Mr. Arnold or whatever the case was.
Yeah, there was only one positive male role model, right? It was Mr. Arnold, you said, right? The teacher.
Armstrong. Yeah, him and his wife were really the only positive people. They were characters in the story, but they were almost those things in stories that are outside the act. Like, they're not characters, they're more like themes.
Mr. Armstrong was a well-educated from a big city, didn't have an accent. They're like, this is the good guy.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. My next stock up is high school sports leading to popularity and women throwing themselves at you. So as a varsity athlete yourself, you know, on the swim team, you should have,
You played lacrosse, yeah, that's the varsity sport.
No, you stop it. You were a varsity athlete on the swim team. That means you're in a Speedo, all right? You should have firsthand knowledge of this. Yeah. Was that your experience in high school?
When I wore that varsity swim jacket, let me tell you, kid, you had to beat him off with a stick. It was tough.
Who exactly were you beating off? That's the question. Someone like U-Haul?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying that was not your high school experience?
I think football players in most high schools are like, I mean, our high school, the football players were popular.
Yeah, ours too, granted, like, it wasn't that big of a deal, but
yeah.
I've always wished to be able to have my Friday Night Lights experience. Not me personally, but to see it happen. You know, just this idea of these people on campus are celebrities, even though they're your peers. It just seems so weird to me because you went to a big college, like a big D1 football college. So you would see those people on campus, right? And they must have been the big men on campus.
Yeah, they went to school for football.
Yeah, even in Demon Copperhead, they said the football players were just doing whatever. The teachers just gave them grades. They weren't actually like doing the schooling part. But yeah, because I went to a high school where football, and we live in the Northeast, or we grew up in the Northeast, so there's not big football programs that are crazy. And also I went to a small college in the Northeast. No one on campus was super cool, but it would be interesting to be in those Texas high schools or those small southern towns that it's Friday night is crazy and those kids can do whatever they want. It'd just be interesting to see in person.
Yeah.
What else do you have for stock up?
Just a quick one. The phrase "beat like a redheaded stepchild" stock up. So we saw that. Yeah, this book.
That's it. We saw it.
I also did see something where they asked what's the highest determiner of domestic abuse for kids, and they're like, oh, poverty, like no, drugs, no, it's all these things they list off, and the guy's like, no, it's having a step parent in the house. That's the biggest factor. 30x.
Really?
Yeah, which I thought was interesting.
Huh. Well, I can tell you, as a child of divorce, I have never been beat. So, stock down. I guess I should have been.
You're bringing the percentages down. All right.
Yeah, exactly. But, yeah, that's interesting. But I think that probably makes sense on a psychological level. You're just like, fuck this kid. I didn't pick him.
There's a lot to be said about apathy. I feel like that. I was going to stock up that, just not caring. If this kid is doing stuff you don't like, who cares? It's not your kid. That's like the best thing in the world. It's like, whatever. Doesn't bother me. I don't get that, you know?
Yeah, well, that's what the drugs are for. The drugs just make you not care. And then you nod off. So
we needed, what was his stepfather's name? Stoner? Yeah, Stoner. Yeah. He was not very stoner. All right, never mind. He was against the stereotype. Most stoners are the opposite of what he was. So, all right, breaking one stereotype. There we go.
I mean, he did start to get on Stoner's good side when he told him he was going out for football and he started lifting weights and stuff. And Stoner's like, whoa, you talking like traps and glutes? And he's like, yeah, quadriceps. And they had a brief moment where they were into each other. But it's also the beginning of the story, I felt so bad for Demon. Like, throughout the story you obviously feel bad for him because like things just keep not going his way, but later on they're more self-inflicted, where at the beginning And obviously they're self-inflicted because of the things that happened at the beginning. But at the beginning, he wanted to, when he didn't have a foster family, he was like willing to stay with Stoner, who he hated. But he was hoping Stoner would adopt him. That's how terrible his outlook was. It's like, okay, the Peggetts don't want me. I'm hoping Stoner wants me. Otherwise, I'm going into foster care. And then you're thinking, why? It couldn't be worse than that. But then you get Creaky Farm, and it's like, oh shit, I guess it can be worse. My last stock up, and super duper quick one, but the Ocean stock up, it has to be, because one, Demon's looking for it the whole time. We still don't see him find it.
Yeah, can we talk about the ending? You give me 20 hours and we don't even get an ending? What was that?
What do you mean? He's tickling his sister on the back of her neck.
That was even worse part.
You didn't like that?
I was going to
talk about
stereotype. Roll Tide stereotypes. The worst part was he was just like, wow, I wouldn't be attracted to her. She's like my sister. And then literally 3 pages later, he's like, I really like her. I was like, oh, God.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they loved each other. It was nice. And they didn't even end up seeing the ocean. But as someone who lives close to the ocean, I can confirm it is pretty cool. So, Demon, come on down my way. You can check it out firsthand.
I mean, if you're going to make a book, though, that's 99% negative, if you're going to close out positively, you can't just be like, and that was that. He got sober, and they went to go visit the ocean. We're not going to talk about that. Like, that's it.
Well, what did you want to see? You needed to see him go to the ocean and be blown away by the ocean?
Remember when he, like, goes up to, like, the top of the mountain, and he's like, and then this person was talking to me, and then this person was talking to me, and if I make it to the next morning, I'll go to rehab. All right, this is the most cliche, dumb shit ever. Give me that at the ocean instead. Why are we in a mountain for that?
Yeah, I don't know. Is that when he met the German people, and, like, he showed them how to make boats with leaves and stuff? That one?
I have this in my head. I mean, you didn't read The Road, but this is The Road. It was like, oh, it's really well written. It's just a depressing book that it doesn't have any... I'm sure there's deeper meanings that I don't get, but there's no story. It's a 20-hour Sarah McLachlan song without the ability to donate at the end. Yeah. It's just like, look how terrible this is for everyone. There's no point of view, really, other than it's just terrible, and then stereotypes are real, and then... you get done. What are you supposed to feel? The
story's a little bit of he did this, and then he did that, and then he did this, and then he did that, and the story's over.
There's not even a lot of callbacks, it doesn't seem like. Because he got abandoned, now he feels this. It's just like, and then he got addicted to drugs. Right when he started getting addicted to drugs, I was like, I don't want to read this book anymore. I would have stopped if it weren't for the book club. I was like so depressed reading it. I was getting nightmares. And
really?
Then, yeah. But it's just so cliche. You're like, well, his girlfriend's going to die, and then he's going to have to get sober, or he'll just die. That's the only two options of this story. That's it. Yeah. There's no other story to this.
But because of that is what kept me reading, because I was like, he could very well just die. You know, that could be the end of
Which I wouldn't have minded. I mean, if you want to make
the last 50 pages are just blank. That's actually an interesting idea for a book, is if you don't look at the back and they make it seem like it's a really long book, but then the main character dies and the rest of the pages are blank. Ooh, now we're talking.
But that's my point, is that if you're going to make it such a cynical, terrible, terrible book the whole time, then fine, finish it cynically. Don't give me 3 pages of, and then things ended up good. Like, no, nothing's good. How is this good? There's not a positive ending to this.
He was tickling the back of his sister's neck. Come on, man. That is good. What'd you have for stock down? How much time you got, feller?
Validation stock down? Okay. I think validation and praise are always nice to receive. I mean, the reason that, we get one 5-star review, hint to... and that keeps me going for 6 months. That's all I need. But the two areas that I think most people most seek out validation is athletics and arts. Yeah. You think about sports and being a famous sports person, or the Oscars or Grammys or whatever, and like the acceptance speeches of being the best and all that stuff, right? Those are the two areas. Demon's great at both of these. He's getting validated constantly in both these areas. He's then getting paid, which is like unheard of, to be 17 or 18 years old getting paid for your art. That's not something that ever happens. You have to be a prodigy also, that you have to kind of like build a name for yourself. So there's just not a thing that ever happens. He's just getting paid, and he's taking that for granted. I mean, obviously he just doesn't understand how talented he is, but like he's getting validations left and right, and
he's got demons. He's got demons. Demon's got demons. It's hard for it to matter when you're on painkillers all the time.
Yeah, okay, that's true. But like the story, I think is a lot worse for someone like Maggot.
Yeah.
For someone like Demon, who his childhood was so terrible, awful. I felt so bad for him. Then he gets in a situation where he has a good home. He has a sister. He money coming in now. He is a popular, tall, attractive, very, very talented sports athlete and artist. He's all these things going for him. Throws him away, and you're like, all right, well, why do I feel bad for him? A guy like Maggot is socially awkward. He's growing up in a backward town as someone that's gay.
Yeah.
He's like, he has such a tougher life, even though he's growing up with his grandparents and that's a little bit better. He's still growing up in a trailer. And again, the social awkwardness and those things, that makes it a much harder life for him. So by the end, I was like, oh, Maggot's the person we should be feeling bad for, not Demon. I don't know. Did you feel that at all?
I mean, yes, I definitely felt bad for Maggot, especially when at the end, because he was snorting meth with the other cousin that was in love with his cousin.
Oh, yeah, they were cousins, right?
Well, through marriage.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not blood.
Yeah, that's for later.
Yeah. That's not necessarily his fault that whatever happened to him because they snorted meth off the dashboard together, and yet Maggot's going to get in trouble for that. Maggot was more of like pitiful sadness because just nothing could go his way. But at the same time, he had the Peggott, like he had his grandparent, and obviously his mom's situation is terrible. Like her being in an abusive relationship and going at her husband and then going to jail.
But even his
fucking
aunt
terrible.
Was like, I'm not going to send him to rehab. That's a waste of time. He's not talented or skilled enough.
Do you know who Maggot reminded me of? You've seen The Sopranos and you hated it, but do you remember when Vito died and his son went straight goth?
No.
Oh God, that's who I was picturing Maggot as the whole time. Which if you see it, just Google a picture, Vito's son goth, and yeah.
If I'm gonna hear another drug story, which I've seen every single possible one at this point, if we're gonna see it, can we get through the eyes of maybe someone that's not? Oh, he got sober, and now his life can be very, very good because he's extraordinarily talented. What about the person that isn't attractive and isn't popular and is socially awkward? Dude? Like, how about that person? Like, that seems like that person has a reason to do drugs. What about them? That seems more of a concern to me. I don't know.
I think as humans, we feel worse about wasted talent, and that's what Demon is. Where Maggot is just a waste of life. As sad as that is, you know what I mean? As sad as that is, it's just Demon has all these innate abilities, and he's wasting them on drugs. So that's stuff. My first talk down, and really my only, I guess I have another one, but is capitalism. Yay, capitalism! So. There's intrinsic positive aspects to living in a free market capitalist society, but with that comes like 5 of the 7 deadly sins headlined by greed. And this book outlines a pretty fucked up design system where big industrialists come into a community for their natural resources, which in this case is like coal and timber, and then limits the jobs that locals can get just so they pretty much have to work for the mine or be unemployed. And then if they want to spend their money that they earn, which isn't a lot, they have to spend it at these businesses that are owned by the mining company or the logging company the prices are exorbitant because that's all that they have in town. And so they have to spend all their money there, and then they purposely keep the populace uneducated so they can't leave the cycle, and then basically have to work super hard, get injured, don't have workers' comp or whatever the case is. So then if you add in a total piece of shit family like the Sacklers, who are the people that owned Purdue Pharma, those people come in and they prey on these communities by forcing addictive painkillers down their throats, purely for profits. So capitalism, it's worked for America to become what it is, but at the same time, it's pretty shitty. I don't know. I think it's funny and we obviously weren't there for Cold War type stuff, but the idea that if you were a communist, you can't turn the country communist, and I don't think but it seemed like that was a real fear, and people were getting, thrown in jail or, losing their jobs because they just believed that this capitalist society wasn't what they wanted to participate in. Mm-hmm. So it's just funny to me that whole thing existed and all this whole Red Scare. Our parents lived through it, but it didn't seem like it was crazy for them. I'd be interested to hear the take of someone who actually experienced shittiness at that time.
I think your larger point is that we prop up capitalism even though we don't really put any checks in place or anything like that because in the name of communism, or anti-communism rather.
Yeah, or they just say you're a socialist or you're a communist or whatever the case is. And that's what the bureaucracy is supposed to check these things, but they don't. And that's, did you watch Dope Sick on Hulu?
No.
It was really, really well done. Mm-hmm. And you saw The Big Short though, right?
Yes.
It's the same but different kind of situation where it's very clear and obvious that all of these people did terrible, terrible things. And at the end, no one goes to jail. Nothing happens.
That's what I was going to say, is it seems like they should just, a big, easy fix to this would just be make people criminally liable, not just financially, because the finance doesn't pay for it.
Oh, no, absolutely not. The big fix to it is to do a Game of Thrones thing, and you Ned Stark these people, and you just walk them out and you cut their head off on live TV. I'm all for it. That's what you do.
They asked Theo Vaughn. They asked him, they're like, well, what's the one thing you would do if you became president? And he just said, I just execute those pharma people that you just mentioned there.
Yes, the Sacklers?
Yeah. He says, I just execute them, and I didn't even know who they were. And I was like, oh, that's a pretty good answer. That's such a funny answer instead of being like, well, here's what I'd do for infrastructure. He's like, no, I just kill these people. I was like, oh, wow, okay.
100%. I'm not a violent person by any means, but it's just so fucked up that you can do this kind of stuff to people because you have money. And it's a trickle down effect, because not only are you fucking up these whole societies now, or these communities now, but then the poverty, the abuse. We haven't even talked about, the whole foster care situation, but just everything just becomes because of you pieces of shit who are looking to make a couple extra bucks. It's just so fucked up. I know that, and because we read sci-fi books, and I think about Foundation and some other stuff like that, where they're looking for kind of the perfect plan for a society. And capitalism definitely does some stuff right, but it does so much wrong. Once again, this is not our wheelhouse, but it gets my wheels spinning.
Yeah.
And I always try to then look at it from a sci-fi type perspective, like an alien looking down at the earth, being like, is this the right way to go about things? Probably not. There probably should be some closer levels of equality going on. Did you have any other stuck downs?
Try to make it a little bit more lighthearted here, but stuck down Willis McGahee.
Patriots linebacker?
No, Ravens running back.
Oh, who was I thinking about? Oh, Willie McGinnis.
This book is written in the 1990s, that's when he grew up, and into the 2000s. So it was basically right when we were going to high school. I
think Demon is in our year, a couple of years around us.
We grew up at that time. It's written it's in 1900. They're like, well, that's this whole big city thing. It's like, you guys have cable. You have cable TV. It's not crazy.
He doesn't, but yeah.
No, but he said we weren't even getting cable anymore at one point.
Oh,
and I was
yeah, he did.
I was like, so people it's not like there's no TVs or anything. I know they might not have internet because they probably don't have a lot of computers, but the communication is significant at this time. They're talking about musicians and things like that. So you're listening to music, you're hearing all this stuff. You're not in this little bubble, which they kind of make it seem like, where they don't know anything that's going on. It didn't really make a lot of sense. So the reason I very well with Willis McGahee is I'm a football guy. He was the number 2 of all the running backs I've seen in my life. He's probably the second best running back I've ever seen, behind Adrian Peterson, in terms of coming out of college.
Yeah.
He tore all 3 ligaments of his knee in the last game. This is in 2003. So this is a big story when we were in high school. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm, of course.
ACL surgery and knee surgeries at that time wasn't this unheard of thing. It was almost like this is out of Friday Night Lights, in the late 70s or early 80s when that was, when someone tore their ACL and they're like, well, they're never playing again. This wasn't, it was pretty common. So the fact that he tears his ACL or whatever he did to his knee, it sounded like the torn ACL, and they're like, well, we don't know what to do. Or you're like, oh, I can't have surgery. It's like, this is commonplace. Like, this isn't even like that crazy anymore.
Yeah, it seemed like Coach would have dealt with this before.
Yeah.
And it wasn't okay. And I understand that they're trying to make a point about the healthcare system that it's going to take him so many weeks to get in there, whatever the case is. I get that point is made. But at the same time, there would be a plan. It would be, yeah, you need to get this checked out. You have a ACL, a meniscus injury, whatever the case is. We're going to get you in there and we'll fix you right up.
Maybe because this wasn't a football book, obviously, but if you're into football and this is Town's into football, you'd be aware of football in general and just general things like this.
Yeah, these injuries would happen, and he wouldn't be the first person in town to ever have torn his ACL. Yeah, it was also funny, like Tommy, who's his friend that worked at the newspaper, was initially hired to like set type, was to like, put the letters on the page so that the printing press would work. I was like, what century is it? They have computers at this point, Tommy.
Yeah, there's a lot of things where they're like, and then Usher came on the radio. I was like, wait, what? Like Usher? I'm like, oh yeah, this must be like, because it's written like it's in. First note I wrote was like, this reminds me of Grapes of Wrath.
It's a new age version of David Copperfield, and David Copperfield's set in Victorian England. So I was wondering, was she trying to make it seem more like that, even though it was contemporary? But then she kept throwing contemporary references out there. And a bit of my online research here was the biggest qualm that people had with this book, seemingly, was that none of the timelines really made sense. Like, he was talking about Carrie Underwood, and based on the time when he would have been talking about it, Carrie Underwood hadn't even been on American Idol, and he was referencing Carrie Underwood. And then some other stuff that he was referencing didn't actually happen yet. Some people got really deep in the weeds where they were saying, I'm from Lee County. The high school that he goes to didn't even open until 2012. That stuff I don't care so much about. And the former stuff I'm not really sure, because we're also hearing this from a narrator in the future who spent most of the time when he was talking about those bits of the story when he was on drugs. And so kind of messing narrator. Up the unreliable narrator type situation seems totally fair to me. But I will say that there was some of it, like the knee thing and Tommy typesetting, that I was very confused sometimes. Like, wait, what year is it? I forgot that it was the 2000. Yeah, he was saying that he didn't have cable, so they could watch That's So Raven, and I was like, I think That's So Raven was on Disney Channel.
But
and
that's when they got it canceled because they ran out of money. So they were
no, but that's what they could watch. No, they could watch. He said we could only watch
that was on
The
Disney
View,
Channel.
and The View, and like Maury, and I didn't have cable, so I know these shows. I was like, yes, tell me more. The Ricky Lake Show, yes, I know it. But then he said That's So Raven. I was like, no, I had to go to my friend's houses to watch That's So Raven. I mean, what?
We're on to them. I got you.
My last knock down is, and I have to do it. It's macabre, because you brought it up on the last podcast. You were talking about macabre, and we have a whole family of macabre in this one, and
a little too on the nose too.
Exactly. Got to stalk down it because they were total pieces of shit, and just the whole foster care situation scene. Like they show the woman the bedroom that he's going to sleep in, and she's like, all right, cool. And it's like, oh, actually that's not your bedroom. You're sleeping in this laundry room / bathroom / dog room. And it was like, oh, all right. Like curled up on some old dirty clothes. Do you have any other stock downs?
Last one, quick one. Comic book origin story stock down.
Okay.
Not because of the heroes that Demon wrote. I thought those were actually kind of cool. I thought he came up with some good ideas. But the fact that not one, but two characters in this book had the Joker smile scars. Two people had that, which is crazy to me.
I've never the other one? Rose or whatever her name is, and who?
Maggot's mom had it, and then Rose.
Right.
And not one reference to Joker, even though he loves comic books. Not just what are we doing here? How is this possible? You did two references or two things to it. No one says anything but the Joker. Come on.
That's a good point. Yeah. He seemed like more of a Marvel than a DC guy. Well, also, we talked about X-Men a bunch on the last pod, and in this one at the beginning, He talks about the X-Men cartoon, like our favorite cartoon that we talk about. Great theme song. And in the audiobook, the narrator tries to do how like a da 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 da, but he doesn't know it. Obviously, they didn't get the narrator to do the research to actually look it up. So he's like dee 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 dun dun, and it's like, whoa, bro, get it right. It's da 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 da. Come on,
you need a special guest for that.
Yeah, 100%. Tap me in. What about favorite characters? Do you have a favorite character? I mean, we got Demon. There's tons of characters in this. Demon, Angus, Maggot, Emmy, Aunt June, Dory, Fast Forward, the Peggotts, Meemaw Betsy, Uncle Dick, Coach, U-Haul.
I think the clearer one is Angus. Not because she's the smartest and actually the nicest character in the book, but really because just her and June are the only characters in the whole book that actually like fought for anything. Seems like everyone else was just kind of like, go with the flow, I'll take drugs or whatever the case is, instead of really fighting for something. And then when someone does fight for something, for like Angus fighting for the academic, I don't know what that was, academic like competition committee, like everyone like makes fun of them and says like, oh, that's a waste of time. Like, what? Like that's such a terrible mentality to have. And like her and June would fight for people, and they didn't even want to go find Emmy either. They're like, we could just give up. I was like, what's going on here? I don't know, it annoyed me. So I appreciate both those characters actually fighting for something.
Yeah, I mean, Aunt June fought for everything, it seemed. And she was invested. I agree with you that I liked Angus a bit more. I needed someone that wasn't so holy. And Angus was a little bit selfish in the good way of, I'm going to get out of this shithole. Like, I'm going to go to a big city, even though that's uncomfortable for me. I'm going to get out of here and try to advance myself. Where I appreciate Aunt June like being in the weeds and deciding that this is her thing. But like we were talking about with how things just continue for generation and generation, it's just crazy to me. And I think these people are all saints, but how someone can just devote their life to all that terribleness and trying to make it better one person at a time. It just seems like such a daunting task. And I know it's like altruistic and they're not necessarily looking for like personal fulfillment, but it would be so hard. I don't know how people do it. I'm a simple man. It would be tough. So yeah, she is definitely a saint, but I appreciated Angus being like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'm going to go.
But she came back. Angus comes back.
Yeah, she did come back, but she came back to, I think, leave again. Like they said she was going to go on to, because and she did also, she wanted to be like a school counselor or counselor in general or whatever the case is. So did you have maybe you didn't have a favorite part of this book. I don't know if you did.
I liked it when he finally moved in with Angus. That was like the upswing of the rags to riches feel good story part. It only lasted for like 50 pages, but
till he blew his knee out.
There's a breather for 50 pages and then back to the regular routine.
I think my favorite part was when he got robbed by the heroin addict / prostitute in the truck stop bathroom, because then I really knew what I was into at that point. Before I was not sure, and then at that point I was like, oh, okay, Keith's gonna hate this.
Yeah.
That's pretty much happened to me. And I got a visceral. That was the one point I got a visceral response. I was pissed. I was like, fuck this bitch.
I was angry that he felt bad about telling the woman to go kill herself. I was like, no, I would say way worse than that.
I would actually kill her.
That's exactly right.
What about Loves?
I thought it was good writing. The way that I would describe this book is, it's like listening to Kendrick Lamar or Nas.
Oh, yeah.
I get that I'm supposed to like it, and I get that people like it, but I'm a simple man. Give me a good beat. Give me a nice story.
Just give me some Akon.
Yeah, like that's what I want. Like, you can keep your good lyrics and good writing. It doesn't do much for me. So.
Buddy, go back and listen to Illmatic. The album is insane.
I mean, I like You Could Hate Me Now. That's a jam.
Yeah, that's on Illmatic.
But that's like a good beat
I'm not
song.
Sure, actually. Yeah. Produced
by P. Diddy, so that's how you know it's good. I mean, wait, what's going on?
Yeah, that song is smooth as baby oil, that's for sure.
Stay in.
I think I love that this book, although terribly sad, and emotional. It has some laughs in it. You know, initially when
No.
demons,
I don't know.
you didn't think so?
No.
Oh,
Go on.
I don't know. When Demon's young, you get some of the classic young kid not understanding about adult stuff type jokes, and then throughout he has little quips or asides or observational humor that I thought was good. It brought some lightness to it, but I think maybe you were so deep in the weeds you couldn't appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
It's funny. Like there's funny parts, or funny lines. Maybe not like whole scenes that are funny necessarily, but him calling people out in his head, or the way he references people in his head, I thought were pretty funny.
Okay.
What else you love?
I like that he wore 88 as a tight end, like Tony Gonzalez.
Yeah, bet you did.
And I thought it was like a Forrest Gump, but instead of the dumb guy being lucky, it's a smart guy being unlucky.
Okay.
So,
yeah. There you go. I thought the setting was pretty good. You know, small town Appalachia. It's not something that we're like super familiar with. You see it in movies and whatnot. And
I also thought they were in West Virginia the whole time. Which
So did
I guess,
I.
Okay.
So did I.
I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
That's all.
No,
I was
you're
like,
not crazy.
I'm like, you're not that far away from the ocean if you're in West Virginia. I was like, wait, what? How's this possible? But
Well, there's parts of Virginia that are on the ocean, you know?
yeah. Well, once they said Virginia, I was like, oh, he must be super inland.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so I didn't really know that either until eventually they said Virginia, and it was like, well, she's in Virginia too, but it's so far away. I was like, oh, right, okay, because I knew they were in there, but whatever. I just thought the
wait, I guess
setting
West
I
Virginia's
enjoyed.
not that close to the water either.
No,
Never
it's
mind.
not.
I'll,
It's not.
I'll hand up. My bad. Cut
I was
that.
like, West
Cut that
Virginia
game.
is west of Virginia.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Hence
And
why
north.
I thought he didn't see the water, because it was further away.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hey, there are parts of Virginia that are more west than West Virginia, so we're back.
Yes,
All right.
that's true. That is
Okay.
true. And I also loved all the characters. I mean, there's lots of characters in this book, but they all play a part, whether they be tropey or not. I knew more about these characters in this book and their motivations, which was mostly drugs, than anyone in Fourth Wing. So at least I knew
I like we're
these
coming into stuff fourth way.
I knew what these characters were and what motivated them,
Yeah.
and I appreciated that.
I don't know. Agree with the motivation.
Okay, the motivation. You either want to do drugs, you're either
Okay.
doing
How
drugs,
is that a deep
you want to
character?
diddle someone in your family. Like, what do you mean? This is it. Or you're trying to save someone. It's
Okay.
simple. Better than lusting for dragon porn or whatever it was. What about hates?
I've already talked about it. I just don't get the point. Or is it the Sarah McLachlan song, but for 20 hours? What's the goal? I think you can tell this story like The Wire does, and it gives me a much better understanding of why people are not able to climb out of this and why people end up doing drugs.
That's not how you felt about The Wire, when it's just, you realize it's all a big circle and nothing changes.
Yeah, but that's more like I at least have my hate can be directed at the government. This, I guess, is you can hate the pharmaceuticals, but I already hated them. You know, I guess I already hate the government though, so I don't know. The Wire at least was a good story. I mean, that's what it was. The Wire just it told a full round story.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, the only hate I have down is there's a lot of poor rural America tropes. We've talked about it, but poor kid with addicted mom, shitty stepdad, terrible foster care, gets good at sports, but then oh no, terrible injury, inevitable drug addiction. The writing was on the wall. Like everything was very clear. So it's a Pulitzer Prize winner. Like this won the Pulitzer Prize in 2023, which I don't know. I don't know what those things mean. So it seems like a big deal, but and I don't need twists and turns necessarily, but it just seemed like we talked about that everything we saw was going to happen did happen, and that was that.
I haven't read or watched The Brutalist, but I imagine it's exactly this, but for World War II, where I could predict everything that's going to happen, and it's going to be super depressing, it's super long. I bet that's what The Brutalist, and Brutalist won the awards, right? So you write this type of book to win that award, right?
Yeah, I honestly have no idea what The Brutalist is. It's that Adrian Brody one. Or
Yeah,
whatever?
it just won. He just won for best actor. And I did want to say too, which we haven't brought up Dory a lot. You said that a lot of the characters fleshed out. I thought she was not. I thought she was a Fourth Wing character. She had great hair. That's it.
Yeah, I'll agree with you.
He was like, her hair was so amazing. So now I'm doing fentanyl at the back of a car. I was like, what? Especially since the first half of the book, you are shitting on your mom and angry at your mom for doing drugs. So like, I don't get why you would go from that to that really quickly.
Yeah, I kind of thought at that point it would be, she's super hot. Oh my God, I can't believe she's going out with me. And then she pulls out the drugs and he's like, hold on a second. I don't know if this is what I want to be doing right now.
Yeah.
And instead he went all in. And yeah, I don't know. I will agree with you there. I didn't necessarily feel like Dory was super fleshed out. We got all my lingering questions out of the way. Like, is it okay to diddle your sister? The answer is yes, according to this book. No, no one was blood-related people. Chill out. It was his foster sister. Chill out.
What you learn is you get more attracted to them if you think of them as your sister. That's the key.
Did you have any cast? Did you want to cast it? I don't think there's anything on the docket for this.
No,
you didn't even want to cast it. I just wanted a young Michael Fassbender for Demon. That's all I wanted.
Okay, I don't know if we can transport him back in time, but okay.
No, we can. We used to do this on this podcast.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And I appreciated that. So I'm taking a young Michael Fassbender because it's a tough spot to fill. You know, he's got to be tall and redheaded and good looking and could be an athlete, but also could be an artist, but definitely is a junkie. That's Michael Fassbender if I've ever seen it. All right, well, I'm interested. What did you rate it? How many out of 4 buddies? How many stars you give this one?
I gave it a 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Would I recommend it to anyone? No.
Oh, definitely not. Not with a 1. My God, that's your worst rating this year.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
I like Fourth Book better than this book.
Yeah, clearly.
The whole point of reading is to escape this world. Why do I want to read a book that just makes me feel 10 times worse about my day to day and this world? Why would I do that? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think there's multiple trains of thought where it's like some people read to escape, and I think we both enjoy that aspect of it, but there's also to get an emotional or like visceral reaction and to feel something. I gave it a 2.5. 2.5. Okay. Which is fine. It's above average. 2.5 out of 4.
Who would you recommend it to is my question.
I think if a traditional book club, like the ones that we don't want to be, I think this would be...
it's a literary.
I think this would
that
be
makes sense.
Perfect. I think this would be something where if I was in a traditional book club and they said, hey, we just finished Michelle Obama's biography and now we're going to read Demon Copperhead, I would be jazzed. I'd be like, this is great. This is exactly... It provides the conversation that those types of situations you want to have over a couple glasses of Pinot Grigio. You know? So those are the people, like my mom. I would tell my mom to read. But for what we're looking for, maybe not. My bad, Keith.
Okay.
I guess I told you to read a 1. All right? My bad.
I mean, I probably would have picked this out just because it's so popular and just listen to it, but I would have stopped it halfway through.
All right, well, what do we got coming up next?
Next, I literally looked on Reddit for lighthearted, fun books.
Yeah, we need it.
I'd actually seen this book recommended, Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. I've seen this book tons of times recommended on Reddit. However, when you go to Goodreads, it doesn't have that many bookshelves. So it must be a very, very guy-heavy book. That's what my assumption is. It's a lit arch PG, which I don't know what that means.
I don't even know what that means. I thought it was one of those when R.L. Stine stopped writing Goosebumps and instead started writing those books where it's like a choose-your-own-adventure book.
Oh, yeah.
Where you read it and then it says, oh, if you want to open the door, go to page 62. If you want to leave the room, go to page 85. I thought that's what it was. I still haven't started it yet, but the cover is also so cartoonish that I honestly, I have no idea what you're getting us into.
I was chasing the last book with this book. I would do a hit of an hour of the last one. I was like, Jesus Christ, I need something positive in my life, and I put this on.
This is your pickleback shot. Like Demon Copperhead was a whiskey, and whatever this book is going to be your shot of pickle juice. But I'm excited to read it, and it's like a 13-hour book, so should be fun. All right, Keith. Well, hey, I appreciate you slogging through Demon Copperhead for me. That was Demon Copperhead, and Keith, I'll catch you for the Dungeon Master Carl or whatever the case is.
Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yeah.
It's a terrible name for a book.
It's not great. DCC?
Carl. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye now.